Welcome back to class time. It's now time for CAPE Communication Studies. I am your teacher, Kelleen Ayton. Today's topic is primary and secondary sources and evaluating sources. So today we will focus on Module 1, Gathering and Processing Information. The objectives from the CAPE Communication Studies Syllabus 2019 requires that students should be able to evaluate the effect of primary and secondary sources, context, and medium or channel on the reliability or validity of information. Also, students should be able to evaluate information about current events. So what are today's specific objectives? At the end of the lesson, you students should be able to distinguish between primary and secondary sources, define key terms such as validity, reliability, and credibility, as well as evaluate a source using the TARP approach. Let us begin. Kamara wants to get some information on how to get a student loan for the approaching new school term. She knows that her friend Cassie recently applied for a student loan and was successful. Kamara decides to ask Cassie about the details and process involved. After getting the information from Cassie, Kamara decides to call the Students' Loan Bureau herself to confirm that the information she has received from Cassie is correct. All right, students, so you get the scenario. Kamara wants a student loan. She asks her friend information first of all, and then she goes to the bureau herself. So we all understand the scenario. So, what do you notice about the two ways Kamara gets the information? So, think about it before I reveal my question, my answer. What are the two ways she got her information? Okay, so let's look now. Firstly, she asked her friend Cassie. And then she called the Students' Loan Bureau herself. So students, what am I talking about? We are noticing here that information supplied from the Students' Loan Bureau is a primary source. Kamara went there and she got it firsthand. While the information supplied from Cassie is a secondary source because she went through somebody and who already had the experience. So it's not as direct as going to the bureau herself. So I've been talking about primary sources, secondary sources. What do I mean by sources? Now, in the context, students, of research, sources refer to a place, a person, or a document from which information is obtained. May I interject here? Once you're engaging in research, you must get outside information. You cannot, will not, and shall not base your research on what you feel or what you think or what you have heard from others. You must use what we call reputable sources. And this is what we're going to talk about a little more. So, as I said a little bit earlier, there are primary types of the sources can be considered primary and secondary. What's the difference between them? For a primary source, they are first-hand records of an event. Remember, I said Kamara went straight to the bureau, so she got that information first hand. They are written, created, or recorded during the period under investigation. And then we have secondary sources. That's when Kamara asked Cassie about her experience. So they are usually written or produced after the event that they purport to comment on. So remember that, students, two types, primary and secondary. Let us talk a little bit more about the primary and secondary sources, because I want you to be very clear, crystal clear, on what are features of a primary, what are the features or characteristics of the secondary source. So let's talk about the primary sources first. They are eyewitness accounts of first records of events. Eyewitness. Okay? They are original sources on which interpretation, analysis, and studies are based. I like that word, original. They tend to be narrative in style rather than analytical or evaluative. They also tend to be subjective in nature. Do you remember that word, subjective? So this means that it tends to be biased because you're hearing just one side of the story. And they are obtained chiefly through observation, survey, and experiments. Let's go over to the secondary side. What are these characteristics of a secondary source? They comment on a primary source, offering explanation, evaluation, and interpretation. Let's go again. They may offer answers and solutions to queries and questions raised by primary sources. So they are working on something that is actually in existence already. They tend to be analytical and interpretive in nature. They may attempt to be objective now. So we looked at subjective earlier. Objective, so there is room for other person's opinion on this matter. And they are balanced depending on their purpose and the author. They are obtained mainly through documentary media. And this is from McDermott 2013. So what are some examples of primary and secondary sources based on the definition that has been provided? So a diary, an interview, your survey, your observation, works of art, official and private records, pictures, artifacts, oral history. So students, you're home now. Think about something in your surrounding, your environment that could be a primary source. Yes, so a photo album for argument's sake, a picture that you have on the wall, that's primary. Let's talk about the secondary now. Literature review, your textbooks, magazines, journal, newspaper, a dictionary, your atlas, encyclopedia, and these are just some examples. So what do you have close by that could be a secondary source? You may have them all over your table right now, your books, okay? So we want to be clear, you should be clear now on what are examples of primary sources and what are secondary sources. Let us get busy now. We are going to do a quick activity. Get your pencils or pen and your paper to write. So you're going to group the following under the headings: primary sources, secondary sources. So because of time, I just want you to write P if it's primary or S if you think it is a secondary source. Let's get ready. So as I read, you write. COVID-19 questionnaire filled out by visitors entering the island. Is it primary? Is it secondary? Put down that letter. Emily Crook's interview with Desmond Valentine, Ninja Man. sports news commentary aired on television 5 hours after the match was played. A new publication in honor of Frederick Hibbert Toots and his contribution to Jamaican music. CAPE results data sheet on the number of passes in communication studies for Knutsford High School. And the final one, lab book used to record findings from experiments done in your biology class. I'm sure you have your answers now, so let us look at what you should have. So for the primary sources students, tick them off. Your COVID-19 questionnaire, good. The interview with Emily Crooks, the CAPE results, and the lab book, those are, well, I'm seeing here, the lab book should be over, oh, the lab book, right, that's your experiment, sorry, that's primary. And for the secondary sources now, the sports news commentary, and of course, the publication, the book, in honor of Toots. I'm sure you all got them correct. So we're going to be moving on to these 3 terms: reliability, credibility, and validity. We must use these words as we engage in research. We must use them. So what do we mean by reliability? What do we mean by credibility? What do we mean by validity? Let's go. So again, we're going to start with an activity. So you're going to listen to me reading and then look at the answers. Listen for the answers. So this is at the Westminster International Airport. And this is a conversation between the attendant and a passenger. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Westminster International Airport. May I please have your travel documents? And the passenger says, good morning, ma'am. Yes, you may. Oh, Mr. Small, your passport has expired. Today is November 12th, 2020, and the expiry date is September 10, 2020. Unfortunately, you will not be able to travel today, sir. You will have to renew your passport before you can travel. But ma'am, isn't the picture a true reflection of me? Yes, sir. I will not deny that. However, you must travel with a valid passport and visa. I am sorry, sir, but that is the rule. What an unfortunate situation. And maybe some persons have found themselves in that position. So based on the scenario I just read, why was Mr. Small unable to travel? What does Mr. Small want the attendant to use to allow him to travel, and why? Why does Mr. Small carry his passport and not his birth certificate? So, students, let's think about the first question. Why wasn't he able to travel? What does he want the attendant to allow him to use? So definitely, he is unable to travel because his passport has expired. It's invalid at this moment. What does he want the attendant to use to allow him to travel, and why? So he's saying, guess what? I have my passport here, there is my picture. But guess what, students? The photo, yes, it could be a true picture of him, but listen, remember that although a photo is provided, there may be physical changes within 10 years. You know that they just last for 10 years. And so questions about credibility come into play, so he can't use the passport anymore. And the third question was, why does he carry his passport and not a birth certificate? We know that the required travel document in his country is a passport, and that is considered a reliable source of identification. Remember, it has a specific code there. It has a lot of information necessary, its travel history, and so forth. Thus, we see that credibility and validity work together in most cases. So students, just in case you're still blank or, unclear about what these words actually mean, let me provide some definitions. Reliability. We are saying if a source is reliable, it can be depended on to be consistent. So we are talking about consistency, yielding the same results. It can be trusted. So for credibility now, what are we talking about? The source is believable. We can accept it. And for validity, there should be evidence that it is relevant to the issue being discussed, that the information can be supported, and that the information is convincing, logical, and irrefutable. Please ensure, students, that you understand this. You're going to be seeing these words. You're going to be using them particularly in your IA. So you have to be clear on what each means. And as you choose your sources, you need to put these to the test. Again, here we go. Scenario 1. The students in Shania's physics class at Belfield High are placed in groups of 5 to carry out an experiment. Shania is placed in group 2. All students are given the same instructions and steps to follow. On completion of the experiment, Shania's team got a different result from the other groups. Which of the following is affected in the experiment? Is it A, reliability, B, credibility, C, validity? Did the experiment, but her results differ. What's the answer, guys? Certainly reliability. Remember, reliability has to do with consistency, yielding the same results. Scenario 2. Jacinth is doing a research on the effects of the prolonged wearing of eyelash extensions on the eyes of teenagers. Interesting topic. Which of the following would be the best source of information? Is it A, Dr. Brown, her general practitioner? Is it B, Miss Black, who has been wearing eyelash extensions for the last 6 months? Is it C, Dr. White, an ophthalmologist? Or is it D, Miss Pink, a beautician who sells eyelash extensions? Best source of information for a topic of this nature. What's your answer? I'm sure you have selected C, Dr. White, the ophthalmologist. And why is that so? We are looking for the best. And of course, this is his area of expertise. This is his specialist area. Scenario 3. Jasmine is doing her communication studies internal assessment on the causes of the increased number of diabetic children in the Jamaican context, or society rather. She finds an article on the internet entitled "Excessive Consumption of Sugary Beverages by Canadians Results in Spike in Diabetic Cases." What's the question? What aspect of her research would be affected if she uses this article she has found? Again, the options are the same: validity, reliability, or credibility. Let's look at the question, guys. Diabetic children in the Jamaican society. And what's the article she found? Yes, diabetic cases, Canadian context. What is affected here? So it is the validity. So the information does not exactly relate to her research question. Jacinth had said that she's looking on the Jamaican Society. Where is this article based on in terms of the context? Canada. And she was specifically interested in children. Now we are not sure. Is it males, females, boys, girls, children? We don't know. So it would not be relevant to her context. Scenario 4. Shauna, you hear this news? Dr. Rocky Robin died yesterday at the Castleton Hospital due to complications caused by COVID-19. Shauna replies, really? Where did you get that news? It's all over Facebook. Check your phone. Really now? You better check your source before you spread propaganda. Let me call his daughter who works at my office to see if there's any such news. And so Shauna makes the call. K, same thing. His daughter just confirmed his death from a heart attack. I'm telling you, girl, we have to be so careful where we get information and how we use it. Now, students, very interesting. Something we can all identify with. Always on our phones, always on Facebook, Instagram, name it, we're there. And we're always spreading information. So, what can we learn from this scenario now? The first lesson we can learn, it is important that we verify information before we spread it. The second lesson you can learn is that you must use reputable sources. Where did she get this information from? Facebook. Then we must evaluate our sources, and we're going to talk about that shortly. And finally, do not use a source just because you find one. So you enter your key terms in that search engine, and of course, a lot of information comes up, and you just say, all right, this is the first one, this is what I'm using. I have no time to go and sort. No, no, no. You'll find yourself in serious trouble. So this leads us, now that we understand validity, reliability, and credibility, how exactly do we go about evaluating a source? You need to find sources, reputable sources for your IA and for any research that you are engaging in. So how do you go about evaluating those sources? So the first thing I want to say to you students, always select scholarly, and I use the word reputable at times, books, newspaper articles. Notice what I have in red? Not news items such as eyewitness reports. Those will be highly subjective. Journal articles, government documents, reputable websites. So our .gov or .edu or .org. Not to say that .com doesn't, but we can trust these definitely. So what I want to share with you this morning as well is the acronym TARP. For me, I learn easier, or I remember things when I attach an acronym to it. And so I want to share with you this morning, students, the acronym TARP. T-A-A-R-P. And this will guide you, this will help you when you find a source and you want to know if yes, it passed the test of being scholarly and or reputable. So, T for time, A for author, A for audience, R for relevance, P perspective, and the other P purpose. So, let's go. So, T, time. What do I mean by time in terms of evaluating? So it's not that time on your watch. I'm talking about currency. How recent is your source? Remember, for your IA, you're required to come up with topics that are trending, things that are happening now. We don't want any historical research, right? Choose current information. And most books will tell you that don't go further than 5 years. Some will say 10, but definitely, students, we're not going back after 10. So it's 2020 now. Try to keep no further than 2010. And I want to also remind you that currency does not justify reliability or validity. What do I mean by that? Because something is current doesn't mean that you can trust it. So right now, maybe a couple seconds, right as I'm speaking now, somebody has uploaded something on Wikipedia. Isn't that very current? Right now, somebody is uploading something on Facebook, Instagram, name it. That's very current. But can we always trust what is there? So don't make that mistake of using currency to justify reliability and or validity. And then we're on to our first A in TARP, the author. What do I mean by the author? I want to explain to you, students, sometimes you find an article, you will find persons' names who definitely are considered the authors. However, in some instances, it's the organization's name that is there. You will not find a person attached. What am I saying? So if you find an article, for instance, from World Health Organization or CDC, Centers for Disease Control, you are not going to find John Taylor's name there. You are going to, the organization's name alone will stand there. Now you need to do your background checks, whether it's on the author or authors or on the organization. We need to evaluate our sources. So what are some of the questions? What are some of the things that we can look for as we find these sources or on the author? The level of qualification or the level of education. So students, we want to know, is it a first degree? Is it a master's? Is it a PhD? Of course, the higher the level, we have more comfort in using or trusting these persons. Their area of qualification, students, not because somebody has the highest level of education means that that person has authority to speak on or write about any and every subject matter in the world. What am I saying? So if I have a PhD in English language, for argument's sake, I have no Latin part, no business over in the sciences. And so you have to do your research to find out if the persons are writing in the discipline to which they have studied. Now, also their place of work. We want to find out, are these persons, is this person working or has worked in the area in which they are writing? Check to see their years of service. Yes, man, how long have they been around? Have they written other papers on the topic? That's something else that you can check on. You want to know if they have had other such writings. Have they been cited by other persons? Of course. If the person has been cited or quoted in other works on a similar topic, go ahead. This is speaking to his or her credibility. And have they cited their credentials? We need to check that out. The audience, students, what do I mean by that? You're my audience. So you need to check out how the person puts across that information. Who are the intended readers? If the writing, for instance, is for a specialist group or specialized group, then guess what? It may not be the best one for you because the language is going to be pitched at a level that you will have difficulty, a challenge, understanding. So we need to find out who are the intended readers before we select that. Why are they reading? So I'm going to just tie in purpose at this time here because we want to know, is it to inform? Is it to entertain? Because if it's a paper, that is focused on entertaining, hello, I don't think that's the paper that you should choose for your research paper. Check to see if the language is formal or informal. What do I mean by that? So formal writing will be free of certain things. You shouldn't be seeing any grammatical errors. You should not be seeing any sentence structure errors. And you may say, Miss, how am I going to know that? You know we're quick at finding out other person's faults than our own. Check to see if they are using contractions, a lot of pictures for aesthetics. No, that's not going to be your type of paper. And the R, relevance. What do I mean by relevance? Does the article relate to your topic? Now, students, remember the scenario we had earlier with the Canadian versus the Jamaican context. Don't just grab something and use it because the keywords or terms from your research paper are there. No, we cannot do that, students. And why? Because the information is going to be flawed. What am I doing with Canadian or Australian information in a research paper that clearly states we are talking about the Jamaican society? Erroneous information right there and then. Is it related to the subject matter being investigated in your research? Ask yourself that. Is the context correct? Then we go to the P, perspective. Is the writing objective or subjective? Students, I've explained those terms already. Let me do so again. If the writing is objective, it includes others' thoughts, other person's research, information on that topic. If it is subjective, it's my opinion and my opinion alone. So I am saying to you, make sure that whatever source you find is objective. They must have information on other persons who are reputable or trusted in that document that they can allude to or include information from their paper. We want multiple perspectives once we can trust these perspectives. We want balance. We just don't want to hear from the author. There must be balance in what you are saying. And when we have balance, it allows for the other side of the story to come into play. Sometimes, students, we have preconceived notions about what something should be. So we are accustomed to hearing that, yes, excess use of the smartphone may cause cancer. That's just hearsay. And so you find a couple articles, you're researching that topic, and you find a couple articles that, suggest that this is so. But somewhere, there is another that says, oh no, there is no evidence, and they provide evidence in their work that there is none. Not because 5 others are saying, yes, there is an association, you should not include the one that says there's no. We need balance in what we're saying. Once we can, trust the sources. So include sources that discuss the other side as well. Do not shy away from that. And the last P would have been purpose, and I spoke about that already. Why is the writer writing whatever it is? Is it to entertain, to inform, etc.? And so, students, just a little addition. So that's our TARP, or T for time, or A for author, or A for audience, or R for relevance, or P for purpose, and or P for perspective. So added to that, students, I also want to remind you about something else that you should look at when you're evaluating a source. Check to see if there's a bibliography or a reference. That's key. We know about the word plagiarism. We want to know where they got the information from. Have they included other persons? And if you have included works from other persons, then you should be able to acknowledge them in a bibliography and or a reference. Check for the place of publication, evidence of bias, and the sites. I started with that. I'm going to remind you, go for these trusted sites. All right. So Our final activity for today. Which of the following would best characterize the information which a researcher may get from Instagram and TikTok? Yes, man. Up and trending. Name them. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. So we're talking about these two. Which of these would characterize the information? Is it A, accuracy? Is it B, credibility? Is it C, reliability? Is it D, currency? Think about it, students. Instagram, TikTok, accuracy, credibility, reliability, currency. Have you found your answer? Yes, I know you have found it. And definitely it would be currency. And I don't have to even expound on that more. We know every second something is being uploaded. Every second we are being introduced to new information. But students, is it necessarily accurate? So it could be, as well as it may not be accurate. We need to be careful. Credible? Sometimes we see things, do we know where it is coming from? No name attached. If persons have written and they can be cited, then they are trustworthy persons, they have experience in this, then they would not be afraid to attach their name, their qualification to that paper. All right? And reliability, we want to know that this information is consistent. So as we recap, students, these are the areas that we covered today. I know that you have learned, I've said a lot, and I know you have learned a lot too. So, types of sources, name them for me. You're correct. Primary and secondary sources. Let's go again. What are some examples of primary and secondary sources? Tell me one right in your room that you are now. So as I said, a picture that you may have of yourself on your cell phone. Then for the secondary, your textbook that you're writing in. Reliability, credibility, validity. Remind me now, reliability has to do with what? Consistency, sameness. Credibility, can I believe? And validity, students, we are talking about relevance. And finally, can you remember my TARP? Can you name it? Or T for time, or A for audience, or A for author, or R for relevance, or P for perspective and purpose. That's the time we have for CAPE Communication Studies. Until then, keep safe. Remember to wash your hands, sanitize, and wear your mask. Have a good day.